doors to nowhere. Teddy's grandfather loved to tell him stories. Usually, Teddy liked these stories, but sometimes he would tell stories that scared him. Teddy didn't like these stories so much. One of these stories was that of the doors to nowhere. What made the story so scary to Teddy was that Grandfather assured him that the story was real. Grandfather said that when he was Teddy's age, he and his friend had been playing in town after school. As the two boys ran throughout the streets, suddenly his friend stopped in his tracks. When Grandfather asked what was the matter, his friend pointed to a strange old door in the middle of a long, dark alley. The two boys stared in curiosity. They had lived in that part of the city their whole lives and had seen that alley many times, and there had never been a door there before. The curiosity was too great, and before they knew it, the boys were standing in front of a strange door. It was brightly colored and ornate, unlike any of the buildings in the city. Fascinated, the boys got closer. There was nothing outright frightening about the door, but something gave Grandfather a bad feeling in his stomach. He told his friend as much, but his friend called him a coward and reached out to try the handle. Despite Grandfather's warnings, the little boy twisted the knob. To their surprise, it was not locked. The boy pulled the door open and was amazed to find a rippling, water-like surface. Grandfather remembered the stories his own father had told him and shouted at his friend to close the door and to run away, but his friend did not listen. Overcome by his curiosity, his friend jumped through the watery surface. Grandfather called out to his friend in terror and ran back toward him, but it was too late. The door slammed shut, kicking up a cloud of dust. By the time the dust settled, and Grandfather could see again, the door had disappeared. Grandfather never saw his friend again. Teddy asked his grandfather where the door led, but Grandfather said he didn't know. Teddy asked if the door would ever come back, and again his grandfather said he didn't know. All that Grandfather would say, that should Teddy ever see a strange door in a place it shouldn't be in, he was to never, ever go near it. The story scared Teddy quite a bit, but he refused to believe Grandfather's claims that there were any truth to it. That was, of course, until one day, Teddy and his friend Henry were out playing in the city. While running to the candy shop, the boys passed by a long, dark alley. Something bright caught Henry's eyes, and he halted in his tracks, causing Teddy to nearly topple into him. Teddy frowned at Henry, but soon turned to look at what had caught his attention. A knot began forming in Teddy's stomach when he saw it. A bright, orange door. "Wow! Look at that!" Teddy exclaimed. "Don't go near that," Teddy shouted. "My grandfather told me about this door. It's dangerous." "How can it be dangerous? It's only a door," Henry responded, walking closer to it. Teddy shouted again for Henry to come back, but Henry ignored him. He walked right up to the door and wiggled the handle. Just like in Grandfather's story, it opened right up. "Wow, would you look at that?" Henry shouted. "Get away from there, Henry," Teddy cried. But Henry still paid him no mind. "It looks just like water," Henry said, reaching out to tap the surface. "It moves like water, too." "Please, Henry, it's really dangerous," Teddy begged. But Henry shook his head. "No way. This is way too cool. I'm going to jump in." At this, Teddy started running toward Henry to stop him, but he wasn't fast enough. In one great leap, Henry plunged through the watery surface, sending ripples splashing about. Teddy looked on in terror, but could see no sign of his friend. He stared deeply into the watery surface until something started to form within. Deep beneath the swirling water, it looked like a pair of eyes were forming. Teddy gawked in bewilderment, but not noticing a pale and slimy hand beginning to poke out of the surface below. It was only when he felt something grasp his ankle and began tugging him that Teddy broke his gaze away from the eyes. Teddy was nearly knocked over by the force of the tugging, but he remained steady and fought with all of his might to back away, all the while shouting for help at the top of his lungs. The hand was very strong, though, and little by little, Teddy got closer and closer to the doorway. Suddenly, though, Teddy could hear the voice of a concerned adult calling out to him. "Who's shouting? Is everything all right?" Suddenly, the slimy hand let go of Teddy's leg, causing him to tumble backwards. In an instant, the door slammed shut, kicking up a huge dust cloud, and when the dust cleared, the door had disappeared. Teddy tried explaining what had just happened to the man, but he realized how silly it all sounded. When Teddy got home, he almost didn't believe it either. He was sure he had just imagined the whole thing, and that when he went to school tomorrow, Henry would be right there waiting for him. Teddy had thoroughly convinced himself of this, until he was changing into his pajamas for the night. As he stepped into his bottoms, he suddenly noticed a deep purple bruise forming on his ankle. It was shaped perfectly like a big, slimy hand.